All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome officially. If you're watching this after, if you're watching this during, my name's Jen Brown. I am the lead trainer and curriculum designer with Renew U.S. Renew is seeking to really build progressive power in states across the country. We're working with partner organizations across several states for the 2022 election and beyond, and really excited about making sure that everyone feels ready to run, ready to lead, and ready to do all the amazing things that go into a movement. So today we're going to dig deep into public speaking, specifically connecting your voice to your audience. I'm going to go through the agenda and then do some introductions and grounding. But I think the most important thing to think about with public speaking is really this prep work that we're going to be doing a lot of chatting about. Today, though, we're going to dig into, like I said, introductions. I'll give you a little background in public speaking, why I thought this was a really important class to offer as part of our continuing education. And then also, I would love to ground us all in the work that we're doing, thinking about what we're fighting for, talking about what exactly is public speaking. I think a lot of times we make it this giant monster in our head, and it often isn't. But because we have so many negative data points towards this, we don't think about how similar it is to one-on-one conversation. Most people that I've chatted with, they say that public speaking is not a good thing for them. They're really good one-on-one, they're really good impromptu, not so good with a big crowd or audience in front of them. And I hear that, and I think a lot of that is the thinking we put behind it. So like I said, we're going to dig into our audience after thinking about what public speaking is, and then dig farther into what you should do before, during, and after a public speaking moment. Then we'll do a brief checkout and then have a question and answer for our live studio audience if folks have questions. And always, as usual, we'll put information, if you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, in the description below. So definitely like, subscribe, and share, and we will put all resources there. So before I tell you a little bit about myself in the public speaking world, I want us all to just take a moment to think about what we're fighting for, not just the, hey, I'm fighting for a change or fighting for a movement. My work is very grounded in housing justice. I've been housing insecure before, not in a traditional way where you're thinking maybe I didn't have a place to go when I was younger. My dad was really abusive and actually got put in jail for both abusing my mom and myself. And we didn't have anywhere to go but home. My mom doesn't have a college diploma. She doesn't have a high school diploma. She didn't have a job at the time. We were completely dependent on my dad. It was the three of us, myself, my mom, and my brother. And when he got taken and put into jail for hurting both of us, we were like, okay, we want to go somewhere, but we have no resources to do so. Later that night, he actually bailed himself out using his debit card, hooray, justice system, and came back to the house that we were living in at the time, smashed the light bulbs, tried to get back in, and here I am as a scared fifth grader, not knowing at all where to go, wanted to go somewhere else, knew we had to, and knew we didn't have another place to go. Fast forward a little bit of time of that, we spent an entire summer in a hotel because we actually were avoiding the subpoena to get us both to testify against my dad in court. This was at the time that the state actually pressed charges and my mom didn't press charges. So because we didn't have any sort of resources at the time, looking back, I knew that's why we had to do everything he asked us to do in that moment, and which was live in a hotel in a different city, funded by him because he didn't want to get punished for the crimes that he committed. Now, as someone who's now an abolitionist and doesn't believe in any of that stuff, it's a very complicated issue. And in the end, it still lives in this idea that housing shouldn't be this commodified thing for me. I believe it's a human right. I believe everyone deserves housing, deserves dignified housing, no matter what you do, no matter what your income is. And that's what I'm fighting for. So really taking a moment to think about, what is that thing that you're here for? What are you fighting for? Why are you showing up, spending some time, not just learning about public speaking, but spending some time investing in yourself? So just take a second, Really go over that story in your head, that thing that you want to happen. Ground yourself with a deep breath. And you'll hear me talking about grounding a lot during public speaking. That's one of the ways, is with this deep breath, remembering what you're fighting for to make sure you are showing how passionate you are about that thing that you're fighting for. Before that, I want to just tap into Renew. We really love axioms of the day. Our axiom of the day for this group, I thought was very apropos. It's the way people are that counts, not the way you'd like them to be. Now, this ties into yourself, right? I see so many people saying, oh, I want to be like this person with my public speaking, or I would love to emulate this person. You are who you are, and you are the best version of yourself when you're in these public speaking moments. You can model and be inspired by other speakers. You should never try to be someone that you're not. And I give a perfect example of this. If you listen to Mayor Pete when he was running for president, and you turn on something, maybe a speech that he did, a campaign talk, and then you also turn on former President Obama at the same time, the cadence of their voices actually match. Mayor Pete admitted to emulating Obama in his style of speech because there's so many linguists that talk about how successful Obama was as a speaker. Now, all well and good, the success of Obama was because he was authentic with the way he is. That success cannot translate by someone just pretending to be that person in the sense of the cadence of their voice. Now, we'll talk about what cadence means and all stuff like that. I think the best thing to remember is you are who you are. Be that best version of yourself. That's what counts. So before we dig into things to do with public speaking, and before we answer this question, what is public speaking? A tiny bit of different background on me. Yes, I'm an organizer, I'm a trainer, I'm a facilitator, I'm a curriculum designer. For over 10 years, I've been a public speaking coach. I ran my own company called The Engaging Educator. We served over 80,000 students. That means adults, kids, professionals, college students, you name it. We've probably taught them in speaking skills. I've worked a lot with media personalities. I've personally done 3 TEDx talks. We coach folks still. The company has been dissolved because I have decided to dedicate my existence to movement and politics work. But folks that worked for us, and while we were running the company, are still coaching folks from Food Network, the people who you see online on the YouTube channel for Food Network, the on-air talent. We worked with all of those folks, and everyone has this nervous element around public speaking. And I think it's so much because of our past experiences, as well as a trauma response that comes up in public speaking. But first off, let's think about what is public speaking. So it can be a lot of things. It can be a talk, it can be a speech, it can be a town hall, it can be a debate. It's truly anything with an audience. So right now, there are people in this session live. So I am public speaking in essence. If you're watching this after, maybe you don't think that I'm public speaking, but how it was filmed and recorded was a public speaking moment. So I think that that definition is really important when we're thinking about what is public speaking. Too often, we think that it has to be this big, huge thing, talking to a giant audience. And it truly can be talking to 2 or more people if it's not a private conversation. That's truly the distinction, I believe, with public speaking. Public speaking is not a private conversation. So if you're talking to one other person, you're talking to your team in a small space where no one is watching, everyone is participating, I think that blurs a line a little bit. If you view public speaking, though, as several different private conversations at the same time with individuals, it might be a little easier for you. We'll dig into that in a moment, though. Thinking about, though, your feelings around public speaking are really important. So if you're listening to this right now, just take a moment to think about how you feel about it. Is it trepidation? Is it excitement? Where are you basing that emotion off of? I mentioned trauma responses earlier. A lot of times we have public speaking trauma responses, you know, the fight or flight response. You've probably heard that. There's two more: freeze, appease. So fight in public speaking is belaboring a point, getting stuck on the same word, getting stuck on the same point. Flight, that feeling you want to bail out. I need to go. I'm done. I need to get off the stage. I need to get away from these people. Going off camera, right? Freeze, nothing is in your head. Everything is leaked out of your ear. You have suddenly decided that you have no thoughts. You have no idea what's going on. You blank. Some people might black out in this moment, not quite literally like pass out, but they might not remember the moments that they blank because it's such a strong freeze response. And then the last one is appease or fawn. So appease or fawn, same thing. It's the giggle, it's the laugh, it's the I'm sorry that we throw out in public speaking. So thinking about those moments and like, yeah, absolutely no thoughts, just vibes in a freeze moment, really thinking about why that happens. I can say with all certainty, so often these trauma responses occur because we either don't prep for the moment, and you'll hear a lot about prep today. You'll hear my favorite phrase when I talk about public speaking with prep. And you're also going to find that these will happen when you yourself have kind of given up going in, meaning you have so many negative experiences in public speaking that you're just bringing that into this new situation. If you don't do it, if you avoid it, if you have like this stack of negative data points, of course, that's going to continue happening afterwards. So it's probably the worst advice that you're probably going to hear right now is keep doing it and do it over and over and over again and as much as possible. But truly, you do build up this idea of a threshold of like, oh, okay, that wasn't the end of the world. Oh, okay, that was actually good. Oh, okay, I didn't have just vibes, no thoughts. I actually had some thoughts and they sounded good. So really thinking about how you feel about public speaking is important because so much of it is like how you say what you say, because how you say it matters just as much as what you're saying. So often people don't remember all of the details of what you're saying. They remember how they felt listening to you. They remember how they felt watching you speak. Think about the last time you were watching someone speak and they were a little nervous, or maybe they started to trip over their words and they got really flustered as opposed to just kept going. You probably felt bad for them. And the thing is, we get the energy we put out. So if we're putting out like, oh, I don't want to be here, your whole audience is going to be like, oh, I don't want to be here and I don't know why. So when I say like the vibes and like the vibe joke too, like it is a lot about the energy you bring on stage with you, whatever stage is. If you're talking to 5 volunteers in a room and they've never heard you speak before, that is your stage. What you bring into that moment is what you get back from them. So a good way to think about it, this is how I really like to walk into public speaking moments. And real talk, I still get nervous. I almost threw up before my first TEDx talk. Before my second, I was shaking and vibrating with so much caffeine. And before my third, I just didn't care anymore because I was like, whatever, I have 2 good ones already. So this third one is going to be fine. And honestly, like you can see that attitude in each one of them. You can see the slight nervousness and uncertainty of my first one. And I'll definitely drop those to the folks afterwards. If you're interested, you can also really easily Google me and see these differences. My husband saw all 3 of them and like in the moment saw all 3 of them. And he was like, this last one, I can tell that you just like kicked the door open basically and just did your thing. Because quite honestly, it is how you feel about yourself. And there's some other things that you're thinking about because it is a conversation. Even if you feel like you were talking to 100 people, 1,000 people, you are still having individual conversations with the individuals in the audience. So you have to think about who you're talking to. who are they? Are they people that you know? Are they people you don't know? Are they people that support you? Are they people that randomly stumbled upon what you're doing? Like, who is making up that audience? Where are they? This one's really important. It's not just location with where are they, it's where are they in history. Let's be real. We are now, I used to say at the end, and now we're in the middle of a global pandemic. We are in the midst of a really contentious moment with politics, with race, with power in this country. So how that affects the people that you are speaking to has to be considered. If you walk on stage again and you have, say, a multiracial working class audience, and you start talking about like things that don't affect them or things that are harming them, and you are presenting it in a positive way, you've turned your audience already. So you really have to think about who's in that conversation with you and where they are. Now, the next two, what do you both want? Super important. We're going to dig into that. Like, what do you want from your audience? What do they want from you? And how do you both feel? Are you coming in feeling hopeful? Are you coming in feeling nervous? Are you coming in feeling confident? Are you coming in feeling deflated? If you'll see some tips about getting pepped up. I'm a big fan of like dance parties before you speak, like doing something, whatever that is, that hypes you up, because that energy that you're walking out with, that is going to affect the people in the audience, because they might be feeling deflated. They might be looking for hope. And that's what they're hoping you provide. So thinking about goals, mind you, we haven't even started thinking about how you're saying what you're saying, or what you're saying, or even words leaving your mouth yet. This is all some prep work that needs to happen in order for you to do the best you possibly can. So goals, right? What do you want your audience to do after listening to you? Do you want them to vote for you? Do you want them to get involved? Do you want them to sign up for more shifts? Do you want them to donate? Really identifying that goal, like why do you care what they're going to do afterwards, and what is it? Absolutely incredible, because then you can look at the content of what you're saying and make sure it lends itself to that goal. People talk to me all the time about editing. We're going to talk about like the difference between scripted, impromptu, and a bit of both. If it doesn't align with your goal and what you want them to do afterwards, probably should not be in your script, in your plan, anything. You want things to be concise and clear and directed at that audience. Next question, why are they there? We talked a little bit about that. Why did they show up? What do they want from you? So not just like what you want from them. Do they want hope? Do they want an action? Do they want to feel like someone's fighting for them? Spoiler alert, most people want to feel seen. Most people want to feel like they matter. And in the political arena, people want to know that you are fighting for them. And that is the you if you are a volunteer, if you're a campaign manager, if you are working to get part of a campaign, if you're a candidate, whatever. People want to know that they matter. They're not just another number. They're not just another person in the audience. And that's why changing your thinking that you are speaking to individuals in that audience versus the audience will really help these points land that you're trying to make. And then that final piece, what do they want you to do? Do they want you not only to fight for them, but do they need a change? Do they want you to inspire them? Do they want you to win and motivate them and change things that are happening in their communities? Being really clear on those goals, that's just going to help you work on that content, which we'll get to because we're starting to think about what to do before you speak. So before you speak, let's break it down. All that audience stuff and goals, that needs to get handled before you talk. Thinking about the content, that's the second piece. What you're going to say. Now, I tell folks when you are thinking about your content, make sure it aligns to your goals. Also think about your wider goals. So for example, if one of your wider goals is to build a relationship with the people in the audience, there's a lot of stuff that can fall under relationship building. So maybe that's a secondary goal. I want my audience to vote for me and to get to know me better. So you think about like what aspects are you putting into what you're saying that contributes to getting to know you better? Is that a story? Clearly, quite a bit, that story of self is a beautiful way for your audience to get to know you a little bit better. I shared a bit of a vulnerable story of self, like why I care about being involved in the progressive movement, but also a bit about me and my credentials for actually teaching something like this. There's a lot of public speaking coaches out there. So I wanted y'all to make sure to know that I am not only in this because I believe that everyone can be an amazing speaker, but also because I am not of the school of thought in public speaking where, okay, you move your hand like this. This is the best way to make a gesture. That's not me. I am very much that authentic, be the best version of yourself speaker. And that's why I shared that with you. So while it wasn't necessarily content related, it is giving you an idea of where my mindset is in all of this. So when you're thinking about like what you want to do in your goals, it is not always like vote for me, give me money, donate your time, things like that. It's also that secondary piece of like showing who you are, showing that person that's on that other side. Like that axiom that we had, like it doesn't matter what you think people are, it's about who you are and those actions that come. You'll hear me talk in this next chunk a lot about what you're going to say in the sense of like scripted versus not. Here is the first of many, many times you're going to hear me say this next part. Practice how you play. What does that mean? If you plan on being scripted, then you have to practice with a script. If you plan on being impromptu, you have to practice impromptu. And if you plan on using a bit of both, you have to practice using a little bit of both. What does that mean? All three of these require time. You cannot practice with a script and expect to be off script when you are actually presenting. Because when you're learning something on script, you're also memorizing word order. So when you're memorizing word order and you skip one word, that's when you lose the rest of the sentence. We've all seen it where someone skips a word and then they have to go back to the beginning of the sentence in order to get the rest of the sentence. And that's because you've memorized or they have memorized word order. It's not the most effective way to public speak, in my opinion. Also, I've been an improviser for many years. I also don't think impromptu is the best way to public speak either, because that's when you go off tangent and all over the place. Some people have found that it works really well for them, either scripted and impromptu. The point is for both of those, like however you're planning on doing it in the moment is how you should practice. I encourage people to do a bit of both. What does that mean? That means you have talking points and you allow yourself to riff on those talking points. Do you have talking points written down? I am a huge proponent of having stuff written down. You don't know, something might happen that throws you off. Someone might scream, a baby might cry, there might be weird weather. Have things written down somewhere. Don't have them written down word for word, because again, that goes back to scripted and memorizing word order. But if you know you want to make sure to hit A, B, and C point, make sure A, B, and C is written down on a note card. So if you get stuck, you can pick up with B. If you get, a little woo with A. If you lose your train of thought around B and find yourself riffing too much, you can pull yourself back to C when you realize, oh, I'm going off script way too much, or my campaign manager is like, hey, back here, or going like this to take, speed up a bit. So thinking about when you're practicing using both I think it's really important to write out a few points that you want to cover and then practice full voice as if you're doing it online, practice online, turn on Zoom, turn on whatever platform you're using and practice like that using your scripted points, I should say. If you're going to present in public, emulate it as much as possible. If your audience is your cat, that's fine. If your audience is your dog, whatever, your roommate, your partner, your campaign manager, the rest of your staff, other candidates, whatever that looks like, that is where so many people fall apart. They're like, oh, I've got points written down. I don't have time to practice. It'll be fine. You will never do as well as you could do if you even gave an hour of practice time in. It is so worth that time. So when I say practice like you play, like you cannot practice in your head if you're going to say it out loud. It does not work. It does not translate. So whatever that looks like, I cannot stress this enough. You will see an improvement in your, what I would say, improvement in your end result, improvement in your speech, improvement in your usual, whatever that looks like, there will be an improvement if you dedicate time to practice. Now, how much time? We have lives. We have a million other things to do. How much time depends on how important it is to you. If it is something that is going to live on forever and people are going to record it and it might live on the internet and you might use it on your website and it might be all over the place, give it enough time because that's something that's really important to you. Especially in the beginning, if you're shifting from a model where you were not practicing like you were actually presenting to actually practicing in the same way that you plan on presenting, if you're shifting there, give yourself extra time to get used to it. Again, the more you do it, the easier it gets. Even with this presentation, I tell you, I've run a company for 10 years on this. I teach this all the time because I think public speaking is so important. I have notes. I practice. I do all of these warm-ups that I'm about to talk to you about because I know that I am not the best version of myself unless I'm doing this. So warming up, that's part of practicing. Again, we haven't even talked about the actual moment. This is like massive amounts of stuff to do before, because when you're in the moment, all of this matters. There's 3 things that you need to warm up. There's your mind, your body, and your voice. So your mind, a little bit of that is practicing. A little bit of that is that audience check. A little bit of that is thinking about your energy and checking in. So seeing, okay, I'm in a good place right now, or I'm not in a good place right now. I need to do something about my mindset. Or, I'm thinking about 100 other things right now. How can I think about just this moment that is in front of me? That is a really, really hard thing to do, which is why when you're practicing, you should do the same. Don't have your email up over here. Don't be checking social media in between sentences. Like, get in a zone with your head that it's like, this is what I want to do with my audience. I am practicing right now. No other disruptions happening, because again, we don't give ourselves the time to actually be good at something like this. We just expect that we're good or we're bad, and that's just what we accept. And that's so not the case, because you'll hear when I talk about body warm up, public speaking is a skill. It is something that can be developed. People aren't just good at it. People put in that time and that mindset to it. We've done a lot of talking about mind, so I want to dig into body and voice for a bit. Body warm-ups, depending on where you are. If you are presenting on Zoom and virtual, make sure that you are standing up, walking around before the moment, getting some dance. Me, always dance party, hype it up a little bit. Jumping jacks are a really good way to get your body moving. And that grounding piece, whether you are doing it in person or virtual, grounding is really important for your body. We talked a little bit about mind grounding, body grounding, super important. What that looks like, you want to make sure your feet are flat on the floor, wherever that is, standing, sitting, whatever. You want to make sure that you are not clenching anything. This lends itself to voice a little bit. Everyone that's in here, you're all on mute. Fantastic. If you're in home watching, great, watching this afterwards. Clench your butt, literally clench your butt and say hello. Hello. And now unclench your butt and say hello. Hello. Your voice falls in. Clenching in different spaces, whether it be your hip, butt area, shoulders, throat, that changes your vocal quality. Now, there's tons of studies out there about resonant voices have more professionalism, they hang with people longer, blah, 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 blah. If you are clenching something, you are tense. If you are tense, that's the energy that you're putting out to your audience. Tension is not good. Like, we watch drama happening at a distance on reality shows. We don't want tension or drama happening in real life. So that clench and unclench, really good check-in with your grounding. I like to clench everything really, really tight and then let it go. And then clench everything really, really tight and then let it go. Because you're training your body that that let go piece is good, is welcome, is open. It also helps with your breathing. So often we're shallow breathers. So before you speak, making sure you're not shallow breathing. What that means is have your hands up by your collarbone, take a few deep breaths in. You should feel your chest expand when you take a breath in and contract when you take a breath out. You're all alive. Congratulations. Now go under your rib cage, like right maybe at the base of your rib cage. I'll stand up a little so you can see. Take a deep breath in. Should get an expand and out. Contract. And then finally down here, maybe right above your hip area, stomach area, take a deep breath in and contract. And if you don't feel your hands expanding when you're down here, work on pushing your breath into your hands. Shallow breathing ends up with shrill voices and ends up damaging your vocal quality. So if you're just breathing from up here, you think about when you get nervous, you're like, or you get breathy when you're speaking, you're talking, and take that deep breath in because you've run out of air, and you're talking, you take that deep breath in, not good. So making sure you're breathing from a point that is deep and calming, that's really going to ground you in your feet. That's going to ground you in what you're trying to accomplish with your audience. Breathing involves muscles. So if you're sitting here going, I'm a really shallow breather, or my next speaking engagement, I'm really shallow in all of this, it's okay. Like same way you would go to the gym, same way you would increase your walking time or your cardio, focus on your breathing. Spend some time grounding yourself in your breath. Now, this again leans itself to vocal because it's all in your body. There's more vocal warmups. But if we remember back in 2016, how Hillary Clinton was called shrill very often, I watched all of the debates thinking about that point. And women tend to get called shrill when their breathing is shallow. Because what ends up happening if your breathing is shallow, then you go up in your head voice when you're trying to talk loud. So everything comes up here. So if you're not breathing and taking deep breaths, you get that server voice that happens. If anyone's worked service industry, hey, what can I get you today? And everything's super high pitched. It's because you're not breathing. It's because you're clenching areas. So if you see Hillary Clinton speak now, like her, hate her, whatever, her vocal quality is very different than it was on that debate stage because she was nervous, because she was getting worked up, whatever was happening with tension, and her voice went head voice. Now, people watching it don't go, oh, that's her head voice, so she's doing this. Like I do because I'm a vocal coach and I hear that. Other people hear that and they're like, oh, she's just shrill. So making sure that breathing, like deep breaths, cleansing breaths, all of that is more than just the woo-woo side of public speaking. It literally contributes to a better vocal quality. I've talked a lot about what happens with women's voices. Unfortunately, there is a bit of a binary in this. I hate speaking in binaries. I know that there hasn't been enough studies on what happens with non-binary folks and their voice. I will say, men, when you, with your deeper, more resonant voices, sometimes when you hold nervousness, it's very throaty and comes here. So everything can sound a little gravelly and be pushed out of here. And we hear that in some vocal patterns when we're listening to President Biden speak. He comes out from here a little bit. And people are like, oh, is he sick? And I'm like, he's not breathing. He's not breathing for whatever reason. So listen to a few politicians and hear where their vocal quality is living. I can say Kamala, like her, again, this is not about how you feel about it, like her, hate her, whatever. She has really good vocal quality consistently. Her voice will break from time to time because I can tell she's like working on her resonance, and sometimes she hits up that shrill, that head voiceness that comes out. She has really consistent good vocal quality. Michelle Obama has consistently amazing vocal quality. Both of the Obamas, like listening to them, they breathe. Someone has clearly worked with them a lot because they are like really consistent with the resonance of their voice. If they warm up, awesome. If they just know how to breathe, also awesome. The last piece here that I want to make sure you're drinking a lot of water. Your body needs hydration. If your voice breaks when you've spoken, it might be dryness. It might be what we're about to talk about next, but making sure you're hydrated and not always with a ton of coffee because that will make you explode. Warming up your voice, aside from the breathing that we just talked about, a few things you can do. Tongue twisters. If you trip over words, this one is amazing. It takes between 70 and 90 muscles to say one word, one single word. You would not run 13 miles or any amount without warming up your body. Why in the world do we try to speak without warming up our voices? So good tongue twisters that I really like, if it's hard to say, it's probably an area of your mouth that's gotten a little lazy. So Irish wrist watch is one I really like because I can slur my S's together. I can also not enunciate nearly enough. So Irish wrist watch, you really want to like chew that word. And again, that's not how you're going to speak, right? Like we're not going to go in and be like, hello, welcome everyone. But when you're warming things up, it's a really nice thing to overextend and over enunciate. I tell people chew gum or pretend you're chewing gum, like, because you're working these muscles. So it's not just your jaw, it's your tongue, it's your hard and soft palate, it's your lips. All of that goes into enunciation. And all of that goes into if you're tripping over words. It means that something gets a little like, and your mouth is moving faster than your brain, or your brain is moving faster than your mouth. So you see, this is all still prep work, y'all. Like when you're up there, a lot of times it's like whatever you've done in the beginning, that's what happens. But if you're not giving time to this prep work, even running a tongue twister or two, Irish wristwatch, you will stop tripping over so many words because you actually have to think about that tongue twister. You don't just get to say it blindly without thinking about your words. Genre practice is something that I really like to do. It finds different cadence in your voice. When I say genre practice, if you're at a point where you feel good about your practice and you're starting to get a little stale in your practice, do it as if you're in a mystery. Do it as if you're in a horror movie. Do it as if you're in a melodramatic soap opera. What that's going to do is find different cadence of your voice. Now, your cadence is how your voice moves through space. We all have a very natural cadence. We all speak in our own way that is unique to us. The problem with that, with cadence, with our own personal cadence, is after a while, people can tune it out. People can, much like white noise, when you hear it consistently enough, then you can go, oh, I don't really hear it anymore. I'm not really listening to it. Cars, sirens, things like that. Those are examples of consistent cadence that you can tune out after a while. So the reason I say genre practice is because you'll find different spaces to slow down, to speed up, to take a pause, or maybe repeat a line. Slowing down. When you slow down, you're making a point. Thinking about your cadence is important. I've also thrown in a pause there, right? I'm letting you have time to think. I'm giving you a break from my own voice. I'm giving myself a moment, so I'm not filling that silence with a disfluency. Those are ums, uhs, and so's, likes, you knows. Pauses, the idea of a pause and a planned pause, huge cadence elements, especially when you're doing slowing down, has been proven to be one of the most successful pieces of former President Obama's vocal pattern. That's the piece that Mayor Pete emulated, or I should say straight up mimicked, and that didn't work for him. Because you think of Obama and you think of how he speaks, and then he comes and speaks over here, and then he says this. He has a very specific pattern, and those pauses allow time for the audience to think. So like I said, slowing down and giving a pause, two great cadence elements. Speeding up. Sometimes people snowball and they speak really quickly. I'm not saying like have your entire cadence be super fast and keep going faster and faster and faster and faster just to get done, just to get off stage. I'm saying if there are moments that you're excited, if you're like, I am so excited about tongue twisters. You've given a little cadence change. It's not your norm. It switches it around. In the beginning, playing with cadence is going to seem super contrived. This is why I say like play with genres. Maybe if genres aren't your thing, then think, okay, here's my speech. I'm going to find a place to slow down, to speed up, to take a pause, and maybe have some repetition. Repetition is simply that. Maybe have some repetition. Finding places that you can repeat, a catchphrase, something you just said for importance. Seeing how that changes not only the quality of how your voice moves through space, but also adds personality and spice to what you're saying. You want to make sure how you want to show up is showing up. I'm a little goofy, a little quirky, a little like woo sometimes, and get really excited about stuff. I am not let me pull together, be a public speaker, talk to you like this the entire time. That is not me in 100 ways. So my cadence reflects that. I have a lot of cadence shifts because that's how I am. So thinking about how your voice and what you want to show up and what that looks like, being that best version of yourself. Some extra bits to think about. We haven't even gotten to during. So a few things like technical stuff first. If it's a big talk, be sure to ask about the mic situation. Just know things in advance. If it's online, are you going to record? Am I going to have control of the Zoom? Like, what does that look like? Like, get all that tech stuff out of the way, logistics, because you don't want to worry about it in the moment. Like meeting, always ask about the tech. Like tech should be one of the first, if someone asks you to speak somewhere or you know you're going somewhere, hey, what's the tech situation? Will there be a microphone? What kind of microphone? If you're doing a lav mic, that one that's like the Britney Spears mic, that is something that they set up and you won't really have to worry about. If it's a mic, a handheld, when you're holding that mic, you never want to hold your mic in front of your face like this, because then you're going to get a lot of feedback. You want to hold it beneath you here. And there's where practicing like you play comes in, because if you know there's a mic, you know you have a mic, you practice holding something. Practice holding something the whole time, because otherwise you end up talking like this and making your gestures with this mic over here. Nobody can hear you. So if you know there's a mic in advance, you're practicing using a mic. You're walking around your apartment, your house, being like, I am practicing, I'm making gestures with one hand. I am talking into the mic and practicing holding this mic at this distance. So it hits around, you see like collarbone level. You should have a mic check wherever you are, but important, like generally speaking, collarbone level is good. If they want you to hold it closer, maybe speak up your end as opposed to be so soft spoken, because when you hold it closer, you run the risk of having it too close. And then you hear those like weird mic pops. And those are never good to hear because they, again, mess with cadence. They also make you nervous. If you need note cards, bring note cards. Don't be a hero. Like if you haven't practiced completely off script, don't do it. I bring note cards. I bring note cards everywhere. I have notes everywhere because my brain will go and out the door. So I want to make sure that I can ground myself back into where I'm speaking and what I want to cover. The other thing, thinking about prep, if you are a gesture person, we didn't talk a ton about gestures. Gestures are very, very personal. There is no right or wrong way to make a gesture. Either do it or don't, though. Meaning, if you're making gestures and you're on camera and I'm making gestures down here and nobody can see me, you just see my shoulders moving. You're like, what the hell is going on, Jen? I make sure that if I'm going to make gestures, they're up here because then you can see it. Same thing in person. If you're making gestures and you're just doing these weird little arm circles, people go like, hey, here's my gesture and here's another gesture and yay. That's not a gesture. That is a nervous movement. So again, when you're practicing, either make the gesture or don't make the gesture. Don't do a half. Practice making gestures to see what feels comfortable. I am Polish. I am very Polish. And I am also an ex-New Yorker. We talk with our hands. It's just how it is. So I can't not make gestures. It's actually feedback I've gotten as a trainer sometimes that people are like, you're making a lot of gestures. I'm like, oh, that's who I am. Sorry. So it's something to consider. If it distracts from what you're doing, then probably not a great gesture. If it makes your point more or is part of you or helps you with your cadence, great gesture. 90% of this class has been about prep. Just want to draw attention to that. 95% of this class has been about prep. I have very few things left to talk to y'all about because prep is so important. During the moments, these are just things to remember because at this point, it is with you and the universe at this point. So things to think about. Remember, the audience wants you to do well. They didn't come there to see you fail. They aren't here, like they aren't sociopaths. Sure, some of them might be, but most of them are not. They want to see you succeed. Remembering that is important. Always unclench your butt. If you start feeling yourself get nervous or getting shrill, unclench that butt. Let it go. I would find myself doing that when I performed off Broadway for a long time, and I would end up clenching my butt and getting really shrill in moments. And I'm like, whoosah, let it go, Jed. Have fun. If you're not having fun, they're not going to have fun, whatever that looks like to you. Remember to care. That's why I say remember to go back to that grounding piece of like, why are you here? If you get stuck, take a breath, pick up where you remember. This is why you have note cards. If you get stuck, move on to the next point. That's it. This is why you work point by point. You know what you want to say, so always ground it there. If you make a mistake, nobody knows this except for you. You don't have to tell us. Maybe someone else knows it that you practice with. Don't tell us you made a mistake. Don't tell us you lost your place. We didn't know that. So why are you telling us that? Make eye contact. Eye contact is a fun thing. On Zoom, eye contact is, or on Zoom on recording, eye contact is where your computer camera is. So you see right now, I'm like pointing at it. I'm not looking at the people here. I am looking at that little green dot. I'm looking at that little camera, and it looks like I'm making eye contact with folks that are watching. If I'm looking at people that are here, it looks like I'm not. Even if I'm looking at my notes versus making eye contact, this is me heavily looking at my notes versus looking at you. Do a bit of both. Clearly, we don't want to go like this all the time. Be talking, being like, yeah, I'm talking to you right now. Very weird. It's okay to look away. It's okay to look up. It's okay to look other places. If you're in person, shifting eye contact is important. Talk over here to the people that are sitting over here for a little bit. Then talk over here. Talk to them for a little bit. The worst thing you can do is scan. So scanning is trying to talk to everyone at once, and you end up talking to no one because you're just scanning your audience the entire time. So a couple sentences to this group, couple sentences to this group, couple sentences to this group, just keep it moving. Eye contact really ups that trustworthiness and connection. So if you are not looking at your audience, if you are constantly just buried in your notes the entire time and looking at like something that's going on, then they're not going to trust you. After the moments, you did it. Woo! Reflect. What went well? What didn't go well? What do you need to do next time? What prep helped you? What prep didn't? Breathe. You are on an adrenaline high after you speak. It's why people keep speaking sometimes. They get that like, yeah, did it. Take a deep breath so you are not like all over the place. You're doing question and answer. Take a deep breath after you talk. Breathe. And then rinse, wash, repeat. You did it once. It is always going to get better if you are actually giving yourself the chance to do better, meaning you are giving yourself prep, not just imagining one day, hey, I'm going to wake up and be an amazing public speaker. You don't do that with the lottery. You don't go, oh, I'm going to wake up and like win the lottery. You're like, oh, if I win the lottery, I win the lottery, right? If you play the lottery even, you don't wake up thinking you're going to be a millionaire. Like you have to put effort into this. And that's such a huge piece of it. And then finally, like do it as if you can't fail, because you won't if you do it as if you can't fail, because failure is such a big, scary word, right? Like what is failure in public speaking? Is failure like running off the stage crying? Is failure telling everyone off? Those are, I think failure for me in speaking would be like, F y'all, get out, right? That's failure. I ain't gonna do that. Even in my most nervousness, I'm not gonna do that. So truly take these things to heart. I'll put some resources into the YouTube. I'm going to hit stop on the recording, check in real quick to see if folks in our live studio audience have any quick questions. And from there, I will say, please take good care of yourself and make sure to understand that public speaking is a skill. It is not something that people are just born good at. So give yourself the grace to get better. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.